Hello and welcome to this bite-sized talk about the top treasure finds from 2020 from across Worcestershire. I am Susheela Burford, the Finds Liaison Officer for Worcestershire. I also cover Warwickshire, but I will be concentrating specifically on the treasure finds from across Worcestershire. Firstly, I just want to provide a brief overview of the Portable Antiquities Scheme and what constitutes treasure for those of you who are not aware. So with the passing of the Treasure Act in 1996, replacing the medieval law of treasure trove, it was realised that a process needed to be put in place to report and record both treasure and non-treasure finds. Now, many items that were being recovered, either from the increasingly popular pastime of metal detecting, from people digging in their gardens or people walking through the fields, a lot of people were finding objects, but there was no systematic approach to recording them. Some museums would record them, but not all. So in 1997, 6 pilot schemes were trialled across England and Wales, the West Midlands being one, for the recording of objects with the aim to advance the knowledge of history and archaeology. Within the pilot scheme, the flow role or Finds Liaison Officer role was established, and this was established as a point of contact to provide information on finds recording, to record and return archaeological finds if they weren't treasure, and to record and report on treasure finds, to advise on best practice, so things like legislation on finding objects, and also advising people not to go looking on shuttered ancient monuments. The database was also devised in 1999, and this was a comprehensive system to store all the finds information and also to make archaeological knowledge publicly available. So come 2003, the scheme has been running in its current form with funding from HLF, DCMS and also local partners. So local partners are all over the country in England and Wales. This is where the Finds Liaison Officers sit, usually within a local museum or local authority. Now the scheme has 42 Finds Liaison Officers based across England and Wales, 5 Finds Advisors, 3 members of the Treasure Team and 3 members of the Central Unit Team based at the British Museum who oversee the administrative side of the scheme. Now the scheme itself is a partnership project to record archaeological objects found by the public in order to advance our understanding of the past. Now one of the main aims of the PAS is to support the Treasure Act and increase opportunities for local museums or institutions to acquire archaeological finds for the public benefit. Now I've included a link here to the a brief overview of the Treasure Act. But in brief, if an object or objects constitute treasure, they have to be minimum 10% precious metal, which is gold or silver. They have to be more than 300 years old. They have to be, when it comes to coins, 2 or more precious metal coins together, or 10 or more if they are base metal coins. When it comes to prehistoric metallic objects, they have to be 2 or more metallic objects together of any metal, so not just gold or silver, and also anything found with something determined to be treasure. So for example, if a hoard of 100 Roman coins were found in a ceramic pot, the ceramic pot would also be determined as treasure under the Treasure Act. Now this act differs from treasure trove, where under the laws of treasure trove, objects have to be less than 300 years old, substantially gold or silver, deliberately hidden with the intention of recovery, and the owners or heirs are unknown. Now here are some statistics for the past year, for 2020. So despite the pandemic and the various lockdowns, the Finds Liaison Officers on the whole have been able to carry on working throughout, and this has mostly meant that we have been identifying objects via photographs emailed to us, which has been challenging, but we have managed it. Now, whilst the number of finds reported and recorded has drastically decrease across the country for 2020, which is not surprising, we still did manage to surpass the 1.5 millionth find recorded on the database. and this was actually a West Midlands find. It was, as you can see pictured here, a lead papal bulla or seal from Shropshire dating to the 13th century. Now for 2020 itself, generally just under 50,000 finds were recorded nationally in 32,000 records. For Worcestershire, it was 380 objects in 331 records. Now in terms of treasure, there were just under 12,000 objects recorded in 921 records. And for Worcestershire, this was 31 objects in 14 records. So for 2020, Worcestershire had 14 treasure cases, which isn't too bad. Here is a graphic breakdown of the treasure items recovered for 2020 across Worcestershire. In the graph on the left, it is the objects by period, and in the graph on the right, it is the objects by find type. As you can see in the graph on the left, most of the treasure items dated to the post-medieval period, which is roughly the 16th to the 18th centuries. In the graph on the right, as you can see, most of the objects recovered were finger rings, and a lot of these were posy rings, which tended to be a plain band with an inscription on the inside, though the band could also be inscribed on the outside or decorated as well. Now most of the treasure cases are ongoing, so either the reports haven't been written yet or the information is sensitive, so I'm not able to discuss them in detail here. For example, the one coin hoard noted in the graph on the right equates to the one Roman find or one Roman case in the graph on the left. I know that this case is 18 Roman coins, however I don't know more than that because the report is yet to be written and I am not the Finds Liaison Officer looking after this case. However, I have managed to collate the top 5 treasure finds from across Worcestershire for 2020, and I've based this on the available information and also tried to find objects that spread across the time periods. So to begin with, here is an early medieval fragment of a great square-headed brooch. Now, early medieval finds are not common for the area, so this in itself is very, very interesting and important. This is a silver gilt fragment of a great square-headed brooch, and this is the foot or the lower part of the brooch itself, and this one dates to the early to sort of middle 6th century. And I've included here a photograph of a more complete example. This one actually comes from Lincolnshire, but this is just to give you an idea of what our Wychavon example would have looked like if it were more complete. Staying in the early medieval period, this is a possible silver ingot dating to the 9th to 10th centuries. The shape and size and the material are indicative of an early medieval ingot, though they are notoriously difficult to date out of context. Now, ingots of this period are usually quite crude in shape, as the Vikings had a bullion economy where the purity and weight of the metal were more important than the form. So this one is a sort of tentative ID, but most likely an ingot from this time. Moving into the medieval period, we have a silver finger ring, incomplete, which is inscribed with Jesus Nazarene, and would probably have read, if complete, Jesus Nazarenus Rex, or Jesus of Nazareth King. Now the black letter script that is inscribed on the outside of this finger ring is considered to be 15th century in date, therefore helping to narrow down the time period of this piece. Furthermore, rings with such an inscription were not uncommon at this time. Moving into the post-medieval period, here we have a silver dress hook with gilding on the face, dating to the 16th century. This dress hook is decorated with a recessed inverted heart in the centre and scrolls on either side. Comparable designs have been noted in the literature and also recorded on the PAS database, though nothing exactly matching what we have here, so it is quite an unusual and interesting one. Whilst there are over 2,500 dress hooks recorded on the PAS database, there is still some debate around how such dress hooks were used. Now, many have been used to fix clothing in place or even hoist up layers to display richer fabrics beneath, as is seen in the painting displayed here. However, depictions of these hooks are rare in paintings of the time in general, suggesting that they were worn out of sight. But many, like our example, are beautifully decorated, which suggests quite the opposite. So if anyone does have any suggestions or answers out there, please do get in touch. Now, the final object I want to discuss here is this gilded copper alloy hat pin with 5 silver studs decorating the face. The design is fairly common with the scrolls in each quarter. It's fairly common for the early medieval period, specifically on hooked tags. Now, hooked tags are very similar to the dress hooks that we saw in the previous slide. However, I did have trouble identifying this one, I think, for that reason, so I did seek the advice of Dr. Kevin Leahy, one of our finds advisors, and he helped confirm the identification of this piece as post-medieval, and he dated it via the techniques used to construct it, specifically the bar at the back, which you can see on the image on the right. Now, you may have heard in the news recently that the Treasure Act will be changing to incorporate more items. The change won't be happening for another year or two, but it is thought that when it does, it will be widening to include objects that are culturally significant for the region or nationally. So with that in mind, I've included 3 items here which I believe could have the potential to fall under the new definitions of treasure when they come into place. First off, in the top left, we have a gold tremesis. This is an early medieval coin, and it's very, very rare for the West Midlands, though interestingly 3 were reported to me in 2020, which is highly unusual, and as such I did have to look into the legitimacy of these finds. This one is a pseudo-imperial issue recorded in the region, the first recorded in the region, and it is of Justinian I and dates to the 6th century. Now, just below the coin is an Iron Age harness fitting, specifically a strap distributor with a crescent design at the centre. Now, none have been recorded on the PAS database as yet with this design, so that makes this one quite unique for the object itself and especially for our region. And finally, the object on the right is a medieval counter seal of Robert Kilwardby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, between 1273 and 1279. Now, the scene in the upper half of the seal depicts the martyrdom of Thomas Becket, and below this is the kneeling figure of Robert Kilwardby looking up with hands in prayer. This design was of the martyrdom above and the kneeling archbishop below was quite common amongst archbishops on their counter seals during this period, and was seen as a possible political statement or personal inspiration. Now, this one is so well preserved, and it is the only example of Robert Kilwardby's counter seal recorded on the PAS database. So that makes it quite an interesting and important find for our area as well. If you would like to know more about some of the finds discussed here, or read more about the Treasure Act, or just understand more about the scheme itself, please do visit our website. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope you have enjoyed this bite-sized talk from Museums Worcestershire.